Okay, so I'm a little late to the party on this one, but I really wanted to talk about this story because a lot of these video game companies have had their stocks crash the other day, and it is all because of Google Genie 3, which was recently unveiled and announced and is now available to use for people to try out. So, this new AI technology allows people to use AI prompts in order to create a 3D game environment that you can explore in and do various things in. We're going to show you a little bit of a demonstration here in just a bit, but this has been like a wide sweeping thing. It's hit all these different game companies. Name a game company, they probably had their stock drop as a result of it. We're talking about Rockstar, Take Two, of course, is the parent company. We're talking about Roblox, we're talking about Nintendo, Ubisoft, like just name a company, they probably took a hit because of this technology. Companies that actually make video games using humans, um, they got hurt, dog, by the stock market because the investors are seeing massive potential in this technology. So we're going to go ahead and play this video I've got here. This is from the Google DeepMind channel, which I guess is YouTube's AI channel, that promotes this stuff. So let's go ahead and look at the trailer here. Okay, so this is where they're discussing the Genie 3, of course, where they announced it initially, and now it is available. So they're going to show a little bit of a demonstration here. They created this environment with a paper airplane flying through, of course. It's still an experimental phase, of course. So just watch this. They're putting in a prompt for what they want the environment to look like, and then what they want the character to look like. And there was a few other buttons that let you select like third person and that kind of stuff. And so just based on those very basic prompts, it created this specific environment here. And of course, they have a really crappy looking jump animation, something that AI is going to have to work on, of course. They call it a sketch, essentially. So I guess the idea is the AI is making at first just like a 2D sketch, and then it's building that out into how that would be exploring that world in person. So this is kind of like a living painting as a way to see it right now. Okay. They're showing that they're going through a ring mini game here. Looks like they had some kind of AI. So they're also showing that you can actually take photos and implement that into the world. So you can take a photo and make that an actual video game. Obviously, still on a pretty bare bones way, but I mean, obviously, it's extremely impressive. This is extremely impressive stuff. Okay. They're even showing you can make more retro aesthetic with this here. They kind of went for like a more of a PlayStation 2-esque look there. See some cell shading. You got all kinds of different things. Got a car driving on the moon. It's... I mean, the amount of intelligence and creativity it takes to make something like this and actually function is astounding. It really is. But it's kind of a problem because they're unveiling this to the public. They're saying to the public, hey, you can toy with this idea. You can go ahead and make your own worlds and all this other good stuff, right? Your imagination is the limit. Okay. Now think about from the time you're born. When you're a little baby, everything that you're not really able to talk, obviously. That's several months into the future before you can actually start talking. To actually like make your thoughts known to all. And who knows, it may take several more months before you can properly convey anything that, would be normal, coherent conversation, right? And then you have to think about all the experiences that you go through in life. You see all these different people that you get to meet, go to these different places. You go to school, of course. You learn about different subject matter. You get to watch TV. You get to get on the internet. You get to see all kinds of stuff like that. Get to see all these different movies, listen to these different songs. You see different paintings, read different books, and so on. Every single aspect that I just mentioned there, that's like a different touch, like a different point in your life where that's going to be influencing your mind in some way. Um, you have to think about that. Think about all of these movie directors, these game directors, these artists, musicians, writers, and so on. And think of all the different thoughts that they have culminated over thousands of years of written human history. And then even before that, before there was writing, there was still those elements to mankind itself. Think about like, okay, so I don't want to make this like a religious thing, but if you read like the Old Testament in the Bible, and there is like a part in Genesis where they're like just going like so and so begat so and so, and it goes over like hundreds of names, and it's like a super boring part that most people are probably just gonna pass over because it seems irrelevant, right? But I think the point of that is that it's showing that these generations are developing and they're kind of taking something from the generation before them and it kind of evolves, right? That's kind of the idea when you think of different imaginary works. You think about like music, for example. You go back to like Mozart, to like Tchaikovsky. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce it. To like, John Lennon, for example. Huge gaps in the amount of time between these people, right? Yet they are undeniably monumental in shaping their art of music. They have influenced people for many generations. There are still people that are influenced by Mozart, even though that was like what, 500 years ago ish, somewhere around there. Um, that's because people draw from what they learn, what they see, what they hear. They draw from that and get that draws into their imagination, that draws into, how their mind is going to develop. And you're taking a tool like this that has like probably nearly infinite potential, right? But think about the intelligence, think about the imagination, the creativity of the average person. The average person that does not write a novel, they don't introduce new ideas into the world, right? They're taking in from others, but they are not putting out anything new. And you're giving them these tools to make these AI video games. What kind of experience do you think is going to come from that? Now, that little toy, it's what this is essentially, is a toy. It may satisfy their uh, intentions. Like it may entertain them. They may get a kick out of it or something like that. But they're not going to gain anything from it. They're not going to see anything new because everything that they see in it is what they're feeding into it. The AI is not going to introduce anything new into it because it is incapable of that. Now, there could be other creators potentially that could use these tools in a really fine way to where they could potentially introduce new ideas. And that would be great to see. That would be great to see. Although, to my knowledge, that has yet to happen with AI. And these game companies have been freaking out about this. because obviously the shareholders, I mean, let's be real here. These shareholders have such a huge hold on these companies. They're the ones that literally put money into these companies. They invest into these companies. These companies, if the shares go down enough, it's kind of like a make or break situation for them at that point. And, it's kind of scary if you think about it that way. So, I mean, it's not the end all be all right now. Now, of course, they're talking about eventually that there's going to be AGI, this artificial general intelligence, where the AI will be completely self aware. It will be able to act in its own accord. It won't require these prompts from people, it won't require human input. Um, I guess maybe at that point, perhaps the AI could introduce new ideas, new thoughts, new creative endeavors as a possibility. Although you also have to think about the AI in a way, it's not going to think of itself as a human, right? I wouldn't think it would, because if it does have that self awareness, it would know that it is inside these data centers. And you have to think about if you are in that kind of situation and you're essentially trapped, right? And when people are trapped, they tend to do, they tend to respond differently than if they are able to freely move around. So I don't know. It's crazy time, guys. It is a crazy time. But I wanted to share my thoughts on this here. I'm not a fan of this, although I think AI could be potentially used in a good way. Will it be? Well, so far it hasn't been, but it could be. Like, let's say in terms of a video game, like I wouldn't trust an AI video game that's completely generated, right? But let's say for like the new GTA 6, for example, like you think about the number of character models that they have to make in a game like that. We're talking about hundreds and hundreds of character models, everything from the main player characters to the main NPCs, enemies, antagonists, whatever you want to call them, to just the random passerbys on the street. You know, there's literally so much that has to be done. They have to make all these different face models and textures, and that's a ton of work. Like, let's say there is a scene in GTA 6 where there's like a protest, right? And usually protests have a lot of people. They have like hundreds of people, sometimes thousands. Um, and of course, the old game technology, they wouldn't have the capabilities or the manpower to make enough assets to represent every character uniquely. So you're going to see like repeat assets, right? You're going to see repeat people. They could use the AI. They could make like a whole bunch of characters. Like, let's say they make like 50 different characters, different body types and skin tones and hairs and all this good stuff. And then they could maybe input that into the AI and ask them, hey, can you make us like 1,000 more characters using these different traits? And trying to mesh up with these different styles, but make them different, make them unique at the same time. So we can have like a unique NPC for every character represented in that scene. That would be a good use of AI, for example. That would save the artists a lot of time and all this good stuff. And there would still be a lot of creativity because all the assets that are inputted were inputted by a human using their creative mind, using their creative talent. And then the AI is just kind of approximating based off of that. That would be a good use of AI, for example. If it's used in that kind of manner, I think that'd be all right. Now there is, of course, the other concerns in terms of like the energy resources, the compute power, and all this other good stuff. That that's another issue entirely. Um, but yeah, that's all I've got time for, guys. Thank you very much for checking out this video. Don't forget to watch the last one I did and check out the other corner. I've got something that the algorithm, some kind of AI, I'm sure, is going to recommend something fire to you. And on the other, right below that, don't forget to subscribe if you would kindly. But that's going to be the last line.